Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson-Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliot Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life. Rob, welcome to the program.
Hi, how you guys doing?
We're great. Tim is here with me for this interview. Elliot is still on a bit of a sabbatical with his very, very busy semester. I think he bit off more than he could chew with his course load this semester. Rob and I met at the Indiana chapter of Children's Health Defense. So many people in our community are quite familiar with the medical freedom movement throughout COVID and before and beyond now. And Rob and I have some similar passions regarding bodily autonomy, health freedom. And so we connected at CHD, shorthand for Children's Health Defense. And Rob's story is got a lot of twists and turns and a lot of pain and a lot of themes that really touch on some of the main themes of love and life, the themes of mindset, themes of not stepping into victimhood despite what tragedies have befallen you, but recognizing that we're the only ones who can control our destiny. And so because of the connection on so many different realms, I wanted to invite Rob to share a bit of his story. Also, he is the author, I should say at the top, he's the author of the book, Our Children Come First. And so he'll tell us a little bit about that. But Rob, let's start with the medical freedom piece, because that's obviously the reason we ever met. Talk to us a little bit about your own journey to becoming a health freedom advocate.
Well, I was in the Children's Health Defense in Arizona because I was living there for 9 years. I'm back a year now, but I was also in a group called Make America Free Again. They're a national free state chapter kind of thing. I just knew something wasn't right with what was going on with that. My awareness with my body and what was being said made me start researching and getting more in depth with groups like that and what was happening. I think what really got me involved with just better health and understanding that group is right before the COVID BS started, I had a massive heart attack. Well, they said it wasn't massive, but I had a 99% blockage. That was in July of 2019. And then it gave me statins and put me in the hospital 8 times total before all that hit. So I started seeing an alternative doctor right before, and then I started looking deeper on my own health, which kind of revolved into seeing all what was happening there after that.
Yeah. And then you do just a cursory glance into health freedom, big pharma, and you find that statins are the worst drug and they do nothing. And the cholesterol number that they say you now have high cholesterol in the 50s, you could have cholesterol levels of 400 and no one was trying to prescribe you anything. So they keep adjusting what the metric is to say that you have or do not have high cholesterol and then prescribe you a statin, which I believe if you are on a statin, you're 40% more likely to get type 2 diabetes. So the idea of just giving a drug, there's always a side effect, always. And so very often the drug that is just going to treat a symptom that may or may not even be indicative of a health problem. For example, now they're relating dementia to having too little cholesterol in your system because cholesterol helps the myelin sheath with the neurons in your brain to help messaging from neuron to neuron in your brain. So now we have this epidemic of dementia because everyone's been on a statin. And just FYI, I'm not a medical doctor, obviously, but statins, to my understanding from doctors I do trust, that's one of those drugs you can go off immediately. You don't have to taper off a statin. And most doctors who are worth anything will tell you, if you're on a statin, please get off it immediately. So did you have to taper off that or did you try to get off it once doing your own research, Rob?
Well, when the doctor was pushing me to get on it, and my body just was reacting immediately.
Wow.
So this was the 1 week after the surgery. And he was just getting angry with me, and I ended up trying 3 different ones. And we were down to 25 mils, which was nothing. And he was like, "We got to get you up to 86 or more." And he's just getting mad. And I walked out and said, "No, I'm not doing this anymore." I just knew any medication I don't need to be on. So that's where I stuck with it. And what ended up happening, since I went in the hospital twice for the heart issue. The rest were for the statin was locking up all my muscles, making me think I was having a heart attack. So that just freaked me out, you know.
Sure.
I was seeing an alternative neuropath type doctor. He also went to medic school. He was a chiropractor, but had his own practice. I started bringing my results to him, and he's like, because they wanted me to lower my LDL to like almost nothing. And he's like, then you don't have any fat in your body and all your organs are not going to work. So I just stuck with that, his process and what he was doing to keep myself getting healthier. Because at the same time, all my organs were shooting out after the heart attack.
Well, I'm glad you found someone you could trust. It's so interesting because in so many of the conversations that we have nowadays with across a variety of domains, it goes down to who you trust. So there are still people who fully trust this Western medicine ideology. If a doctor shows up with a stethoscope and a lab coat, they trust him implicitly. My doc said this. And then you have people like me, and I'm guessing you now, Rob, I wouldn't go to a traditional Western medicine doctor ever. And in fact, whatever they tell me, I'm probably going to do the exact opposite. So it's really a very uncomfortable place for people to be because as a culture and as a society, we have such very different sources that we rely on and believe to be telling us the truth. I'm not trying to say any source I'm not even saying that the Western medicine docs are trying to not tell us the truth, but their sources are these medical journals that are funded by big pharma and the medical schools that they went to also funded by big pharma. So they may not even be aware how much of their ideology has already been orchestrated by factions that want to sell us a pill.
Right. That's seemingly my situation and what I was
Yeah.
learning there, you know.
Yeah. It's very hard for people to conceive or comprehend that there are people, professionals to whom and in whom they've given their trust who would do something that diabolical. And it takes a lot to go, wait, did Anthony Fauci, was he involved in this gain of function research that perhaps was part of the reason COVID was unleashed on the world, whether purposefully or accidentally? No, he couldn't have been. He's been a public servant his entire career. And for people to wrap their mind around something, it's very hard for us. And I'm not trying to say that I think globally everyone out there in a professional capacity is out to get us, but I also think some are. We better wake up. It's kind of like Rob is talking about this awakening, like in his personal, from some of the bullet points that he shared with us, that his personal awakening. And I think we are seeing, at least for some of us, a societal waking up from realizing we couldn't and shouldn't have trusted some of these entities, but we did by and large. I mean, there were always dissidents, but we called them quacks and there was propaganda to support that. Those Chinese herbs, that's just bunk. Those quack naturopaths just out there, those again, well, I say again because something that is a theme on our program is that so many of those ideologies in my childhood were those crazy California hippies who won't see a regular doctor. And yet now we see that these left and rights have kind of flip-flopped in a way, but only certain content areas of or philosophies or belief systems have flipped. It's just a strange time where everything seems in flux and it seems like the ground is really shifting beneath us and we're all trying to grasp. And so yeah, it's a bit of an awakening. Rob, tell us about the awakening from your perspective on the personal level. Put it as you're awakened to the reality that you are the cause of your reality. You are in charge of your reality. What does that mean for you?
Well, first with medical, I went through all this and alternatives and herbs that we can take. I was going more deeper with meditation and to hear and listen to the body. Listen to what my mind, the negativity, remove the negativity out of my thought feelings, and then go into the body and feel the body. But as far as the message, I had situations with relationships years ago where I kept going from one relationship to another, thinking they're the problem until a point where I had to say, wait a minute, why am I attracting these people to me? I'm the issue. It's my reality. I'm creating this. But I had to learn that first. It took
Mm,
years to understand it. And I was following Louise Hay and Dr. Wayne Dyer for years just to totally grasp the mind and how we can create our reality based on our thoughts. So you bring both of those together, then that's when things start getting more healthy, within ourselves and then around us.
Well, and I think it's important to recognize, like you spoke to relationships and the patterns therein. And we talk a lot about that on this program. And when you recognize that, oh my gosh, I left this relationship and then I found another partner, and goodness, the same dynamics emerge. And then you go again to another partner and the same dynamics emerge. And then we have to realize the common denominator in all of this is me. So, what part am I playing? And why am I, like you said, attracting these dynamics into my life, saying I don't want this, saying there's too much drama here, breaking up with someone, and then just attracting the same exact type of person into my life again. I think that's really wise when we are able to take a step back and examine ourselves a little bit more objectively and recognize that we are part of it instead of pointing the finger and, like we talked about a moment ago, taking on a victim mentality or mindset. And I have a friend who it's just every job he has, there's gonna be a problem with the boss, guaranteed. And then, we've been friends since college. And I'm like, okay, now we're talking 30 years now, bro. Always a problem with the boss. Have you just had that many bad bosses? So it's easier to see when it's not you, is what I'm getting at. So sometimes that self-awareness can be difficult. Rob, you also mentioned in your book, you talk about your daughter. So can you tell us a little bit about how raising her and what you went through as raising her as a single dad, I believe, for many years. Talk about that.
Well, yeah, the reason I wrote that book is, well, this is my daughter since she was 5 months old. Unfortunately, the mother was unstable, on and off drugs, violent behavior, but it was more raising the daughter and going, and I was in court 10 times. And it was, since I got full custody right away, it was more about protecting her and keeping her out of unsafe environment. So learning, how to go to court, what to do in court systems, dealing with narcissism and how to control that in some way and still not lose your own composure and anger with all that. I can agree that I had an anger problem for a long time, and this was probably one of the main humbling situations, had to go in court, dress nice and not worry about it and protect my daughter. I even had people come up to me, ask me if I was a lawyer because I was doing what I can to keep my composure. But raising a daughter in that situation, going to school, had extreme ADHD, very stressful, non-going situation.
Well, I think raising children is A, hard, and then B, harder when the mother has an addiction issue and narcissistic tendencies, and you're doing it by yourself. That's a lot. And then the courts are involved, and that's also a lot. And I can understand any child having a hard time paying attention at school when there's all this other stuff going on, is as your daughter's a little girl trying to make sense of what's going on in her little reality in her life, and understand just a lot of difficult challenges therein.
Yeah, and even at the last part of the book and last part of my story is the last 3 times in court, I had to help my ex-wife's second husband get custody of their daughter. That
Wow,
makes sense. So same mother, 2 different fathers. Me and him became friends,
that's nice.
and the kids would hang out, right?
Mm,
But then he had major spine issues and issues with dealing with our ex that he
mhm.
ended up ODing.
Oh, was
And
this was this the opioid epidemic? Was it an Oxycontin?
it was methadone.
Because he was on the methadone to get off of the Oxycontin?
Yes,
Oh,
and
goodness
the
gracious.
doctor gave him way too many, and he stressed, and one weekend just had way too many, and end up that same month, same doctor, 3 other people had passed from the same prescriptions. But there was an investigation back then, nothing happened. But at the same time, his daughter was 10 years old, was across the street, came home one morning to find her father on the bed, passed away.
Oh my gosh.
So then
Oh,
child services got involved and took her away from everyone that was taking care of her and
mhm.
was forced back to mother. And that's where child services comes in. In this area, I learned they don't like the West. They take the children away from them, the parents. Here, they put them back with the parents no matter how abusive they are. It's like total opposites. And I had 16 years of proof, documents, court cases, and they straight out said, we don't look at court cases. We don't care about that.
Okay. Why are you wasting taxpayer dollars making everyone go to court? I mean, like, we don't care about it. Why are we doing that?
While all this was going on, I went to worked for many businesses as an engineer in piping design. And every 2 or 3 years, there was a pattern, like you were saying, I was laid off, fired, or I quit. So then I'm in a fast paced business, had to work my butt off, and then had to struggle for finances while
Mm,
raising my daughter. So finally, it hit me that all this experience, how can I help others with their own mindset to reprogram that consciousness, reprogram that body? And for 2 years, I've been working on this. So I've got an ebook, presentation cards, and I got to do videos next. But the ebook's called Employee Self Awareness Test Stress Management for Fast Paced Business. So I'll be going into businesses, targeting the management on how I can help the employees work better together by working on their own individual mindset.
yeah, and that seems like a really talk about the stress. I just know from my industrial organizational psych courses that the number one reason people leave a job is because they don't feel appreciated. And I do know that many workers feel overly stressed out because they're asked to do so much and they don't feel appreciated in their role and they probably aren't being adequately compensated. I mean, I think there could be a lot of good that could come from organizations looking into that. Like, how can you let your employees know that they matter and that you are appreciative of what they're doing? And then at the same time, the other thought that crosses my mind is this is going to be even more important because we're going to have in the next couple of years, we're going to have a lot of people jobless because of AI. And how would an employee feel when basically they're told, guess what? The computer can do a better job at your job than you. So I'm just throwing that out there because I'm alarmed that people aren't more concerned about this AIO takeover. So that may be a conversation for another day. But I was just thinking about that as it relates to feeling appreciated and feeling stressed on the job.
Well, what I'm going to be focusing on with these individual employees is what are their trigger points? Why are they being triggered? Because if we're really working on going deep within ourselves, nothing outside of us should affect us. And if we're being bothered by the way, well, for example, I went to last 4 or 5 jobs. I quit because my boss was yelling and screaming at everybody. So where did that come from? Why am I upset? Why am I getting triggered? So when we get more confident in ourselves, we can still progress within that environment and not allow that to trigger us. So that's the process that I'm trying to focus on because I learned my reason I was triggered because that's the way my father talked to me. So, you had to
Yeah.
go in and think about that first instead of just, oh, I'm just going to get another job and rush, rush. Why is that? Same with relationships. Or why did I go from one to the other? That insecurity was there's a loss feeling in my heart. And I had to cling on to the next person. So this all kind of relates on our
Hmm.
progression with ourselves.
Are you familiar with Stoicism? That whole philosophy? It's very similar to what you just said. That
Probably, no, not in those wordings, but different
Yeah.
ways.
It's very much related to, one of my favorite orientations in psych too, in therapy, which is REBT, which is rational emotive behavior therapy. But just the gist of it is it's not what happens to you, it's how you interpret what happens to you, how you respond to what happens to you. No one can make you be triggered. You allow yourself to be triggered based on what happened in your past, as in your example. No one can make you feel anything. And yet we say that all the time. He made me so mad. That made me so sad. No, nothing made you feel anything. You allowed yourself. You interpreted, you perceived the situations to cause you within yourself to have an emotion. I'm not saying that people aren't hurt and people don't do wrong, bad things and people aren't wronged by others. What I'm saying is we have to own our own experience, our own emotional experience and our own cognitive experience. That's the only thing we really can control in this life is what we decide to think about and how we decide to allow our circumstances to work on our emotional state too.
Through meditation and clearing the mind. Of course, you're working this at home, and then when you get in an environment, you can clear it easier after practicing. But I've learned that this is also an energy. That thought can be released as an energy through breath work. So, combination of things there.
Yeah, in psych, we do biofeedback, which is like you're saying, trying to sit with a thought, perhaps. Maybe someone had a traumatic experience in their past. And so they're in therapy and they're trying to sit with that thought. I'm going to think about it, but I'm not going to let it impact me physically the way it always does. I'm going to try to breathe, deep breathing, I think about it, remind myself I'm safe now, even if I wasn't safe when I went through that in the past, but I'm safe now. I'm in control now. I'm an adult now. No one can hurt me. All those kinds of things can be helpful. And this sounds like it's real similar to the philosophy that's really helped you take more of an empowered approach to your own life and your own circumstances.
Yes, at the beginning I was talking about Louise Hay. I don't know if you
Mm.
heard her.
I've heard of her, yeah.
She passed a while ago, but 40 years of her book called You Can Heal Your Life. So that's kind of, I studied that pretty extensively
Hmm.
on the power of the mind, power of intentions, motivational, how you speak to yourself. That really helped me focus, keep going back to that. So you have to do this over and over again to reprogram the conscious and the thought.
Yeah, that internal dialogue or internal monologue, whatever it is powerful. When I first started this podcast, the tagline was take charge of your thoughts, take charge of your life, because I realized I was happy when I was squelching the negative thoughts, when I would shine light and nourish my positive thinking. It made all the difference in my mindset, in my mood. And I wanted to share some of those kinds of, and again, these are approaches from cognitive psychology, cognitive therapy. They're nothing groundbreaking or new, but they're things we need to remind ourselves of over and over again. And Tim mentioned like growing up in the home and that culture that he grew up in helped him to be a little more skeptical. And I was blessed that Elliot and my father was very much a take charge type of person. He had come from poverty, just born right during the Depression, and he had to learn how to take charge of his own thoughts. And that was very much, he would say things to us over and over again. Elliot wrote a book about it, but he'd say things like, make it happen, doll babe. That's what he always said to me. Make it happen. And take charge to Elliot when he was out in the basketball court. Take charge. And so we didn't learn this kind of victim passive way of approaching life. It was, you're going to be the author of your own story. Get after it. But if I hadn't had that, and he had a ton of skepticism also, which praise God, because that kept me more of a dissident in the medical realm, which obviously came in handy during COVID and before and also beyond. But he taught that. And if I hadn't been raised in that environment with those kind of messages, I would have been left to whatever messages were coming at me from the culture or from society or from other sources. So it's such a gift to be able, and I'm sure you've done that with your daughter, but if you do have young people around you, trying to help them have those messages. So that's the internal monologue that they are telling themselves, instead of falling prey to that default mode, which can be more negative, or like you were saying, falling prey to being triggered by A, B, C, D around us. So it's a very empowered way of living.
Well, yeah, also the person shouldn't rely on everyone else either. So they can be
Right.
more confident and strengthened and progress in their life with their own confidence.
Yep. Self-reliant. I want to thank Rob for coming to share his story. And again, the name of his book, you're saying, is this the ebook or is that one? But that one's available in a hard copy too. Is that correct?
Well, Our Children Come First is on Amazon. You can
Okay.
get it there. The other one is not done yet. I'm working on
Okay.
presentation cards and making courses with that.
We can link the book on Amazon in the show notes. But yeah, Rob, is there any way people can connect with you if they want to learn more?
Well, the courses will be under consciousalchemistcoach.com. That is the name I'll be calling myself, and as I grow with this and helping others, and hopefully have a membership group and all that, and work deeper on each person.
All right. Well, thanks again for sharing your story and your words of empowerment and encouragement, and a touch of dissidence too, which is very on brand for Love and Life here.
Thank you.
Love and Life with Dr. Karen and Pastor Elliot is produced by Tim May and executive producer Dr. Karen Anders-Nabel. For more information about Love and Life, please go to loveandlifemedia.com.